Hi, my name is Katie Schuler. I'm a marketing program specialist here at Time4Learning. I'm also a longtime homeschooling mom. My oldest son, Bailey, used Time4Learning from second grade all the way through high school, and he graduated from our homeschool in 2017. My youngest son, Braden, has been thriving with Time4Learning since preschool, and he's currently in 11th grade. Today, I have Dr. Jessica Ruiz joining me. Dr. Ruiz is the Chief Psychologist and Director of the Behavioral Health Associates of Broward. If you enjoy this interview, please subscribe to our channel and like us on social media to see more fun episodes of Tales from the Homeschool Front. Hi, Jessica. Thanks so much for being with us today. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We're thrilled to speak with you. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Jessica Ruiz. I'm the Chief Psychologist and Director for Behavioral Health Associates of Broward. It's the counseling centers of Goodman JFS of Broward. And we provide a lot of services in the community. We provide individual counseling, family counseling, groups, all types of support groups. And we're really here to improve the well-being of our community.
That's wonderful. Again, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I feel like it's just going to be so helpful to our listeners and our families. We know, 2020 and 2021, there's been a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to roll with and evolve with. And we know that so many families have, questions and concerns, and they fear for the direction of their child's education, whether that's homeschool, public school, something in between, or a hybrid, trying to get back on track, but what is back on track now? So the questions that I'm going to ask, they're really going to be specific to initially kind of some educational type questions, how to help parents kind of address concerns with their children, but then also how they can then process things themselves. So to get started, the first couple of questions, we've had a lot of families tell us that they're going to be choosing to homeschool or will be continuing with homeschool if that's something they started in 2020, 2021, because of health concerns related to the new variant. How do parents talk to their children about not going back to school?
That's a great question. And every family has a different situation going on. So in some families, the children are perfectly happy and fine, we're staying home. We've seen that actually a lot of children they do thrive in the environment of being homeschooled or doing virtual schooling. For others that might miss going back or missing their classmates, and yet maybe due to, health status or concerns of the family, homeschooling is the best option at this time. So for those students, it's going to be more of speaking with them and saying, what are the things they're concerned about, and if there's ways to still meet the child's needs without necessarily, putting them at risk.
And that's something that we tell people a lot too, even without a professional background like yours. That's the biggest thing. And even outside of the pandemic, a concern that most children have if their parents want to transition to homeschooling is that, well, how will I see my friends? So we constantly try to stress to parents, address that, reassure them that you're going to continue letting them get together. You're going to continue to try to arrange gatherings, play dates, group meets, and stuff like that. So, I know that's only one concern that kids can have about not going back to school, but that's usually a big one because that's their peer group and they want to still be a part of that. So I like that, encouraging parents to just continue to stress that you can meet that concern. You can address that concern. In talking to their children about not going back, what are some do's and don'ts that parents should and should not make during this conversation?
So one of the things I would say is be mindful of our own anxieties being transferred to kids. So kids learn a lot about the world by watching us, right? So if they see that we're anxious and we're nervous, whether we say it or not, they can usually pick it up. But even more so, we want to stay away from things like, it's dangerous to be around people, or, the best way to stay safe is to only be at home, because those messages may spur additional anxieties or fears or worries about health and whatnot. So I would say staying clear of that. Adding in things like information, right? This is why we're making this choice as a family, being able to have the discussions about, what we can do to stay healthy, right? There are plenty of things that we've learned with this variant and with the other variant of how we can still stay safe in certain situations. So I think being informed, keeping a calm head, that even if we're anxious, how we can learn to manage our own anxiety before sitting down and probably having those conversations, because children they look at us to see, how should I be really scared?
And I love that. And I have a personal, that's relevant to me as someone who has anxiety. I project that, and I'm aware of that, and I work on that continually. But that's a great tip. If you're concerned about the variant, you know, I love providing children with information. Often I know when my children, they're older now, 21 and 16,
Mhm.
when they were little, I was kind of raised with this, well, some information is just over their head. And, parents make these decisions because that's what parents do. And not saying that that's not still the case for some situations. Of course, families know, but I love that you spoke to providing them with information rather than speaking to, I'm scared of this variant. These are the concerns behind this variant. And, that's a great tip. Can you offer parents tips on how to make the transition easier?
Absolutely. So, parents know their kids. So I think that for some, what will make the transition easier is just, again, information's a big piece. So what is this going to look like, right? Thinking about, does the student have some concerns? What are the parents' concerns? And how, as a family, we can come together and navigate them together. Um, as I think, what the pandemic has done for us in a different way is help us think of priorities, right? What's important, and what do we value, and how do we come together? It allowed us to see how important connections are, and
Definitely.
and also how we can be creative and still learn from adversity. So this is a great opportunity to teach our kids and for us to grow in how to problem solve, and how to still live and thrive, even if the world looks a little bit different than it did the year before.
I love that. So true. The prioritization and the problem solving, everything from what you perceive as this minor to, how we grocery shop changed, and, major decisions to like what we're dealing with today, education. So I definitely can appreciate that. And then this one's a neat question, and it is specific to this period of transition, but it's something that a lot like homeschoolers have faced historically, as long as there's been homeschoolers. How do parents address other people's opinions about their decision?
Oh boy. So this is, I think, a bigger question in this world, right? When I think a lot of people share their opinions and maybe don't listen as much to why, or even ask, I'm curious, what brought you to make this decision? What are the benefits of this? So I think, whenever we fall on the other side of where maybe some people are not understanding, we can do a couple of things. One is we can inform and educate others, and actually explain why something is important. The other thing is also being able to understand some people will still have their opinion, and just being aware, and understand that we still do what's best for us and our family. So educate whenever possible, and the other messages we've been giving, I think, as a world, as we've managed and navigated this, this pandemic, the message has been, understand that people need to make their own choices, based on their current family situation, their current family status, and that we just support each other and lift each other up.
I love that. That's the message that I hope people know. I think I'm a longtime homeschooler myself, and I think that our default over the years definitely falls back to, well, they're my kids, so it's my decision. And that's acceptable for a lot of things. But, I appreciate you pointing out and the message that we try to give other parents, educating and informing. There are a lot of people who are, there are a lot of stereotypes when it comes to homeschooling. I faced them when I started in 2005. Um, it's a much bigger movement now than it was then, but there are still stereotypes involved. And I think just trying to let people know that this is what homeschooling can be like. Like you said, it's a great way to educate and inform, and just share. Open yourself up to hearing those opinions, because even if it's negative, even if it's something that you're afraid of, maybe it'll spark something in you. Maybe it's something that you'll go, okay, well, if this is a concern that my family member has, maybe we can do this to address that within the homeschool. So there are a lot of ways that parents can really talk to, others instead of just falling back on my kids, my decision.
And the other thing I want to say is that I think a lot more people, given what this last year and a half has looked like, a lot more people that have never experienced, virtual schooling or homeschooling got a flavor for it. And I actually think a lot of people are switching over
Yes,
because they really truly see the benefits, and they've seen their children do better in that setting, and have learned a lot about their children in the process. So I think there's been some switching of camps, after this past year and a half.
I agree. We've talked to many families over the last year and a half, and it's not something they would have ever considered. It just wasn't in their roadmap. Work schedules. Their children were doing fine. It just wasn't anything that they even attempted to consider. And then when faced with it, like you said, you're seeing your kids thrive. You're seeing this growth, and you're being able to address these strengths and these challenges in a way that a classroom wasn't able to do. So I agree. And statistically, I probably have the numbers wrong, but I think the number of registered homeschoolers for, this point in 2021 is like double what it was, like a 50% increase or something.
Wow.
There are a lot. So a lot of people are continuing to make that decision.
Right.
And now we talked about those that are either choosing to homeschool or continuing to homeschool. But of course, there are families that are going to go back to those brick and mortar classrooms after having homeschooled or done the virtual school thing for the past 18 months.
Right.
How do parents address their children's anxieties about going back to school after being home for so long?
Some schools are really great with this, in the sense of informing parents, hey, these are the precautions. This is what we're doing in the classroom. I know that I've worked with some students that have been very, very anxious about going back, and we've worked with the school system to ease them in, where they're able to go on campus. They can see, what it looks like. This is what they can expect, that type of thing. And also having the conversation with their kids, about masks and how they feel about their own masks, and how to manage, peer pressure if that's the case. But I always go back to, the more information we have and that we're armed with, we're better able to approach any situation. Because then if we think like, I don't know that this information meets my needs, we know that we can ask more, we can figure out or brainstorm, was there a way around this? So parents, I would say, find out more about what the school's precautions are. What do the classrooms look like? Speak to your kid and see what are the anxieties that they have. We do know, like I said, we've had an uptick in anxiety and depression across the board. I would say, as I look at our current clients, some who were actually getting ready to wrap up before the pandemic, and they were doing well, kind of come back and say, you know what, I need more services. We're seeing more children also coming in as well with, how do I even navigate this world? So the other thing is that I'd keep an eye out for if we're seeing anxiety really start to kick in other ways, where the child's having a difficult time sleeping, or having shifts in mood. These types of things we want to watch for, and then know that maybe we need a little bit more than just the conversation or information, but maybe getting some assistance.
That's a great tip. So back to school jitters, I mean, they're real all the time. In any back to school season, parents and kids especially, they're real. They're probably more intense right now than they have been before. How can parents teach their kids to socialize again, making new friends, dealing with difficult or uncomfortable situations, getting back to a classroom setting?
So one of the things is I like to fall back on successes we already have. So the truth is that for most kids, unless we're talking the little ones, where this is really their first time ever in a school setting, then that the anxiety is going to be there, no matter what. But for other students who've already gone, have been in classes before, reminding them that they've done this before, right? And rather than I'm really big about asking rather than telling, but really asking, asking the child or asking the teen, have you felt this way before? When classes were starting, what were your concerns? It's usually something like, I don't know, I won't know anybody, or how am I going to make friends? Okay, so you felt that way, and then what happened later on in the year? And really pull out, because in most situations, we do meet people. We are able to make some connections and just remind them that they already have those skills in place, and that probably everyone else is just as nervous coming right back into school.
And I think that's key too. In a normal, everything is pre-pandemic now, but pre-pandemic,
Yeah.
it's understandable that children, teenagers think that their anxieties are so individual that it's just theirs. But I love that, pointing out that, your other classmates have been out of the classroom for just as long as you have, and they're going to be
Right.
feeling the same things. So talk to one another about it too. Make one another feel good. Encourage and support one another. And oftentimes, I know for my own anxieties, if I'm trying to encourage or support someone else, mine take a back burner, and then I'm often able to kind of hear what I'm saying to someone else, and I'm able to go, okay, well, if I can say that, then I can hear that. So
Yeah, that's great. Reaching out, how do your friends feel? How do you guys support each other through this process, and how can you help each other on the first day back? So there's a lot of ways to approach it.
yeah, I love that. What can parents do to help kids get back into a more typical or a traditional routine? So, if they've been virtual schooling, chances are their routine has been at least somewhat set. Homeschoolers, they're able to really set an entirely new schedule. But what are some tips that you can provide to help parents, kind of get their kids back into a routine that they need to be in?
So while we're sitting here talking about this pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, the truth is I think we have this conversation every summer as then we're getting ready into the new year, right? So what will the routine look like? How do we make sure that we're getting enough sleep, that we're adjusting ahead of time? So what a lot of parents start to do is they start to ease back, and are we waking up, going to bed early enough that you were still rested if we wake up in the morning? If they get a sense already of, hey, this is what the schedule is, this is what time we need to be here, this is what time we're picking up, and just starting to get the body used to, getting up, getting dressed and ready to go in the morning. And I would say, within the couple weeks beforehand, to just start that process up, because that's a big part of it, is just getting the body ready.
Sure. I'm not a morning person, so I can totally relate to that. Anytime my schedule has to change for a length of time, it's like this
Yeah.
whole big workup. Okay, I'm going to set my alarm. I'm going to hate it. I'm going to set 3 alarms. And then eventually I'm down to just one. So yeah, I like that. Just remember that chances are for most families, you've had this back to school kind of, wall that you've had to climb before.
Yeah.
So the next set of questions, it's not really going to be specific to homeschooling or re-entering the classroom. It's just kind of general, help for parents and children. What are some tips that parents can use to manage their own anxieties so they're prepared to deal with those of their children?
Absolutely. So, for starters, I think especially when you're caregivers and you're taking care of other people, sometimes our own needs go on the back burner. So I think it's a good time to do an inventory check and say, all right, am I meeting my own needs? Because if we're running on empty, it's very hard to manage, anxiety and or, concerning thoughts, because we just don't have, the energy to do it. So I usually tell my adults, it's like, okay, so when do you have time for you, or to do something that you enjoy, to provide that support? Do you have social connections and people that you can rely on, people that you could talk to that really listen to you? Remembering the basics, physical activity, eating healthy, just to keep our body in a good place. And then, if we're noticing that we're really struggling with anxiety, with difficulty with our mood, maybe we get very, very sad or very, very irritable, and it's interfering with things. Like, it's hard to get up in the morning. It's hard to do work or to concentrate. Then at that point, that's a really important signal that our body and our mind is letting us know it's okay to get some help. Like, you don't need to do this on your own.
I love that you say that. I'm a huge advocate for mental health, as most people are. But, I've spent my boys' lifetimes telling them, if your throat hurts, if your throat feels off, you're gonna want to fix that. You're gonna want to take something to help your throat feel normal and better. And it's so important for us to do those self check-ins and to really recognize what we're trying to tell ourselves. How can parents prepare their children to answer questions and or build boundaries around personal or sensitive questions about school choice, masking, and vaccinations? This one's huge, because it's definitely still a division in a lot of areas. So this is be a great question.
Right. I think if we look at this as just like other things in our life where we do need to make decisions and maybe other people wouldn't agree with, but it's what's right for us, we're helping build our children up and be able to give voice to that and be able to manage pressure. So I think if they have a few different ways that they can say what they want to say, even like if it's practicing, all right, let's just kind of role play. What is a way that we can uh, kindly tell someone what we think, and or thank them so much for their opinion, but this is something that's really important to them, it works out well for them. So I think if they have language on how to approach somebody else that comes their way, but then also to let's just normalize that it happens, and that I think if we prepare them to say, some people may not agree, other people believe different things, and that's going to happen from time to time. So how do we, as a family, and you with your friends that do connect, how do we, continue to move forward and do what's right for us? There's always that balance, right?
Sure.
No one wants to feel left out or to feel different, and especially for kids, especially in certain developmental periods, it is like critical, like they thrive on being accepted. So I think finding a way that they can have the conversation with those that they feel they need to, that's in their own language, that kind of still connects with their friends, but gives them that space to say, this is important, like I need this is for me, this is what works.
That's great. And that's great for parents to hear too.
Mm-hmm.
We find that in our own dealings, workplace, with friends, with family. I mean, chances are there's going to be a differing opinion. So just kind of really knowing it's
Yeah,
okay to set boundaries.
absolutely necessary, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some warning signs that parents should be looking for in their own children that
Mhm.
something isn't right or that they're not thriving in the choice that was made for them?
Sure. So children tend to show us, not tell us, and especially depending on the ages. But early on, what we see are behavioral shifts and behavioral changes. So they may not be sleeping well. You may see a lot of irritability, temper tantrums, behavioral problems where we see them kind of acting out, and it seems to really be either it's increasing through time or seems to just be very abrupt. They're letting us know that something is exceeding their capacity to cope and that they're struggling. So they usually will show us. So I think if we come from the perspective of not just looking at something, oh, this is a problem behavior, but rather, I wonder what the challenge is, that my child is telling me they're struggling with. Something's going on here. As they get older, they may be more likely to share, hey, this is how I'm feeling, but they also may not. We're finding that especially, with the preteens and teens, they're much more likely to tell their friends than they are to tell us. But good indicators are things like grades. Are they pulling away from friendships, or are they still engaged? Are they the activities they used to do before? If we notice they're really not as interested anymore, they're sleeping more than usual, these are signs to say, okay, they're letting me know, without realizing they're letting me know that something's not quite okay.
Those are so important. Often, I know when my kids hit teenage years, both of them, even though they're 5 years apart, I have this kind of in the back of my head, this societal, oh, kids are like that. I mean, kids do
Mm.
that. Teenagers do that. Teenagers are always moody. Teenagers always sleep. Teenagers never want to talk to their parents. So I think it's important to stress that, your kid, your child, and like you said, acknowledge their kind of ask, whether that's a typical ask, like they talk to you, or it's a behavior that you're seeing. And I think that's so great to, that's not the case. All teenagers don't sleep. All teenagers aren't moody. All teenagers don't have fluctuating grades. All teenagers don't hate their parents. They're, really, really notice, really, really look and understand your kiddos.
Right.
And then the last question: what are some ways that parents can positively reinforce their children's confidence and ensure that they will have the tools that they need to cope and adjust as changes continue to occur?
That's such a great question. So I'm really big on pointing out strengths. So I think when we notice that, our child or our teen has uh, had a difficult situation come up, and they handled it in a way that was pretty cool, like really being able to talk through it and say, wow, how you handled that, how did that go, how did you choose to do that, and really get them to be able to say out loud so that they can hear themselves, and we can reinforce that process. So I think looking for strengths and pointing them out whenever they're there, that's really what builds our confidence. And, what a lot of research shows is that when we feel, when we have high self-efficacy, confidence that we're able to do something, we're much more likely to do it again. We're even much more likely to try things. So finding out, looking for those successes, the small successes, the big successes, and making them a big deal. And because they kind of, we can keep them there as a way to pull from for a future situation. Like, hey, you remember, I'm wondering what we can pull from this other situation into this, because, that seemed to work out pretty cool the last time. So I'm really big in looking for those strengths, pointing them out, and making them the thing to talk about.
You celebrate everything. I've recently told another parent just that. If your child graduates from a picture book to a chapter book, that's huge.
Yes.
That's huge. 2 high fives. Because eventually that small chapter book is going to change into a larger chapter book. Everything is going to adjust from there. So celebrate the little things. They've been working on multiples of 4 for 6 weeks. Look, you're on multiples of 5. Celebrate everything. So
yes.
I love that you're able to kind of reinforce that for our listeners. So again, thank you so much for your time today. I have really appreciated on a personal level what you've provided. The advice has been just incredible. And we know that these questions are on so many people's minds right now, more than ever. So thank you so much for your time and what you were able to share with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
I really enjoyed it. So again, thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of your week.
And you as well.
That's it for today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about our homeschooling program, please visit time4learning.com or email me at the address on the screen. We're happy to connect you with a wealth of information like videos, resources, and blog articles. Until next time.